Alright guys, today's a double review of two Berny watches. So I'm going to try and make these two quick reviews, get it in the one video. If I didn't manage that, you probably noticed from the thumbnail that I've split it up into two separate videos. But hopefully I'll manage to do it. So we've got the usual Berny packaging. You've got the outer sleeve with the Berny branding on. Slide that off. You've got the little tagline, "Witness your legend." Interesting. Just a simple cardboard box. Nothing fancy, but does the job. Then we've got the watch in there, just on a nice soft cushion. Pop that to one side for a second. Quickly go over what else you get in here. So you get a Berny tag with the model number on the back. Then you've got the links I've taken out. So to get it to fit my 7-inch wrist, I've taken out 3 links. And they are just push pins. You've got the instructions. And then also, which is interesting, this little card talking about the 2-year warranty. And then QR codes scan to be able to get to that. So nice little touch. Obviously the other one is exactly the same, so I'll move these out of the way and we'll get down to the reviews. So first up we've got the Aquaterra homage. I've got it in this light blue colour, but if you're not keen on this, they do plenty of other colours, so the link will be down in the description if you want to check them out. And I do think it is a really nice watch. It is really nicely finished. So mainly brushed case, just some polished chamfer details, and then we've got that polishing on the bezel. Now, as you saw before, the bracelet is a mixture of brushed and polished as well. So brushed outer links, polished centre, and then polished on the outside. Before we talk about this anymore though, let's talk about the dimensions. So we've got a diameter of 41mm, thickness of 13.6, lug width of 20, and then the all-important lug to lug is actually 49.3. You can see we've got male end links, so the effective lug to lug is more like 53.2, but you can see they curve down pretty quickly, so it does still wear nicely on wrist, as I'll show you in a bit. Let's take a quick look at the dial, talk about that in a bit more detail. So we've got applied indices, and then just the printed Berny branding at the top. 200 meter water resistant, 656 feet, automatic just above that date window at the 6 o'clock. I do like having the date window at the 6, definitely my preferred position if you're going to have one. You can see we've got a high polish on those indices and on the hands, all nicely done, and you've even got a little bit of lume in there as well. So we'll be doing a quick lume shot in a bit. Nice proportions on those hands too. No really short hands going on, which you do get with some watches now and then from AliExpress, so that's good to see. The only real gripe I've got when it comes to the dial is that Berny brand, really. I'd like it if they came up with some kind of logo and just replaced the Berny with that. But let me know what you think down in the comments. Quickly zoom back out and then we'll talk about the bracelet a bit more. So we've got a butterfly clasp, and it is a little bit interesting this. So you can see we've actually got a little step on that one. So when you undo it, you have to make sure that you do this side first, otherwise if you do that, it's not going to shut. So something to bear in mind, but does fit nicely, not loose at all, works well. Quickly show you the case back. So pretty simple. So sapphire crystal, 200 meter water resistance, all stainless steel, automatic, and then the Berny branding and model number in the middle. Solid end links, solid bracelet, all the good stuff you'd expect. Oh, and I've just done that. Didn't listen to my own advice. So let's test if it is actually sapphire crystal. Using the trusty Dermatolets too. And yep, we have got sapphire crystal, so that's always good to see. And it is actually a domed sapphire crystal as well. So you get a bit of distortion there. Feel like a domed crystal, as you probably know. So when it comes to the movement in this, we've got the NH35, but one slight issue I do have is this crown. If I zoom back in, you can probably see better. You can see they've actually smoothed off the edge of that, which looks good, but it does mean that it's a little bit awkward to grip. It's slightly slippy. Not entirely sure why they've done that. Obviously no one really tested it out. You can still use it, but as I say, it's just a little bit slippy. Otherwise though, that all works well, as you'd expect with the NH35. No issues there at all. So now let's check out that loom. So you can see we've got a little bit there already, but let's charge it up, give it a chance. And there we go. So I was pleasantly surprised when I checked out the loom on this one. I wasn't really expecting a great deal, because there isn't a lot of surface area there for it. But as I say, pleasantly surprised. Really strong glow on those hands especially. Indices ever so slightly less bright, but still good, no patchiness at all. And it does actually last a surprisingly good time. A lot better than I was expecting for this kind of budget kind of watch. Obviously it's not going to be as good as San Martin, but it's definitely better than what you get from Berny design. So, pretty damn good loom. So all it's left to do now is show you what it's like on wrist, and then we'll move on to the next watch. So here's what it looks like on my 7-inch wrist. And as I say, those centre links curving down pretty quickly. It does conform to wrist well, despite that slightly larger end link to end link measurement. And I do think it looks really good. Obviously with the butterfly clasp sizing, you wouldn't be able to get ideal. For me this is a touch loose, so I'm wearing it slightly higher than I would normally. But you can always wear it a little bit looser, I guess, or obviously it'll vary depending on your wrist size. You can see a little bit loose there, so I've just got it slightly higher up. Unfortunately that's just one of the downsides of butterfly clasps. You're never going to get the perfect fit, but that's not really an issue with this watch specifically, that's just butterfly clasps, as I say. I do really like that dial, love the way the indices catch the light, the high polish, same with the hands. And I just think it's a really smart looking piece. Really like they've got that domed sapphire crystal. I think they may even have a little bit of AR coating on it as well. I don't seem to be getting as much glare on this one as I do with some other watches. So I think Berny might be up in their game a bit. So I do really like this one. The only real issues I have are that slightly smooth crown, as I mentioned earlier. They need to sort that out, it's a little bit slippy now and then. The Berny branding, ideally changed to a logo. But other than that, I can't really fault it. I think it's a really good watch, especially for the money. But now, let's move on to that second watch. So next up we've got this compressor style watch. So totally different to the previous one we just checked out. And right off the bat, it's a pretty chunky one, so that might put some people off, but given the style of watch, I don't think it's too bad. Before we get into this, let's quickly go over the dimensions. So we've got a diameter of 41.5, thickness of 13.4, lug width of 22, then the all-important lug to lug coming in at 48.7, and that is the important one. So I'll show you what it's like on wrist in a bit. Before we do that though, let's get a zoom in on that dial. So we've got a pretty interesting dial here. So you've actually got a couple of different sections there. So that centre section is actually slightly different to the outer bit with the applied numbers. Got a little bit of depth there. We've also got a nice sunburst effect. And then obviously we've got that inner rotating bezel. So the crown on that isn't screwed down, but it has got a little bit of resistance, so shouldn't be knocking it and moving it, I don't think. I haven't had any issues with it anyway. Obviously depends what you're doing. When it comes to the rest of the dial, got nice high polish on those hands, really nice length on them as well. Then that day date function at the 3 o'clock, little cutout for that as well. So the movement in this is pretty interesting. It's not one I've checked out before. It's the Miyota 8205. So unlike the 8215, this one does actually hack, as well as hand winding, and also the rotor noise just isn't as bad at all. So improving the two things that I really didn't like about that particular movement. So I do appreciate they've used that. So quickly zoom back out and we'll talk about the rest of the watch. High polish on those crowns, both unsigned. It would have been nice if they'd put something on there, like a little logo or something. And then the case is mainly brushed, with just polished chamfered details on the edge there, and around the bottom edge of that bezel. And then obviously the top of that bezel is fully polished. And you can see we've actually got a nice integrated rubber strap here. Well, I think it might be silicone actually, I'm not entirely sure. I think it's rubber though. we've got a nice bit of texture on that diamond kind of pattern, and a nice bit on the back as well. Nice big buckle to go with the larger dimensions with the watch. And you probably also noticed as well, got a display case back there. So apparently this is hardened SS HV600 scratch resistant. Not entirely sure if that is true or not. Don't really know how I can test that, but interesting nonetheless. Sapphire, 200 meter water resistant, and then the model number. And I'll see if I can get that movement. So hopefully you can hear, or not hear, that rotor too much. As I say, nowhere near as loud as the A215. Vast improvement over that one. So seeing as it's mentioned it on the back, let's check if it is actually sapphire crystal. Using the trusty diamond select tool. And yep, we've got sapphire crystal. Quickly check out the back. And we've actually got sapphire on the back as well, which is not something you see that often. So that is good. Especially for this kind of price to watch, that isn't always a given. So now, let's check out what the loom's like. So you can see we've got a bit there already, but let's charge it up, give it a chance. If it's anything like the other one, this should be pretty good. And there we go. So again, as with the previous one we checked out, this one is actually pretty nice as well. A lot better than I was expecting, again. So no patchiness across the hands or the indices. Pretty consistent across the two as well. And again, I'm pleasantly surprised with this one. It's a lot better than I was expecting. Again, not San Martin level, but better than Berny design. So, pretty impressive loom. So I'll quickly show you that movement in action. So as I said, the inner rotating bezel, that's not a screw down crown, but the other one is. So we pop it out once, and change the date, turn it the other way, change the date, pop it out again, you see the second hand stops. So as I said, we have actually got hacking with this. Then obviously we can just change the time. Pop it back in, second hand re-engages. Oh, you've also got hand winding as well. Pleasantly surprised with this movement. As I say, it's the first time I've checked it out. Definitely an improvement over the A215 in my opinion. Not the highest end of movements, but it does the job. And the power reserve on it is 42 hours as well, which is good. So what's left to do now is show you what it's like on wrist. So here's what it looks like on my 7-inch wrist. And as I said, because we've got that pretty compact lug to lug under that 49mm and the slight curvature to those lugs, despite the rather large dimensions otherwise, it still wears quite well, I think. If you've got a smaller than 7-inch wrist, it's probably not going to be for you. Obviously 7 and above, no issue at all. And this strap is really, really comfortable. I do really like this. Obviously getting an integrated strap with it is really nice too. It's a good quality one. Might be a touch on the short side if you've got a really large wrist. Because I've got, how many holes left is that? I think it's 4. Oh no, yeah, 3. So, something to be aware of. When it comes to the rest of the watch, yeah, it's a little bit chunky, but you can expect that with this style of watch. But I think they've done a really good job on the dial. I do like that sunburst in the centre. But they've got a couple of different layers there as well. The applied indices, the high polish on the hands and the indices as well. Just catches the light nicely. An interesting dial. So if you're interested in picking one of these up, the link will be down in the description as always. But that's it for this one guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.